Everyone, I'm Anthony Schma from Tyndall Oliver. Quick little intro on how everybody got here and some important links. Everyone received in their inbox the notice on how to get to here, but important email on here is Dennis Saloon, the Safety Academy Coordinator. Any questions, follow-up information about the Academy, it's all on here. My email address is there as well if you have any technical questions or issues with the technology. On here as well, there is a login for the Tampa Bay Traffic Safety Academy. That is a webpage that takes you directly to the location where all of the webinars are posted. The presentations and the video recording of the webinar will be posted as here. Also on here, there's a calendar of completed and upcoming webinars. There are some that are being rescheduled and moved around. Dennis will get into that in a little bit more detail. But if you scroll down, this is where all of the videos and recordings are for the webinars that we've been doing since we began the Academy back in 2013. At the bottom of this page as well is the download link for the PDH request form for the professional engineers that are seeking to get credit for this webinar. With that, I'll hand it over to Dennis for the official introduction.
Can you see my screen, Anthony?
Now we do, yes.
Okay. Good morning. This is Dennis Balloon, the District 7 Safety Academy Coordinator Consultant, and we welcome you both, everybody, to the 7th District Safety Academy webinar for 2017. Today's safety webinar topic is Modern Roundabouts by Ken Sides, the PE, who's a Senior Transportation Engineer with Sam Schwartz Engineering in Tampa, Florida. And as usual, I will go ahead and give you a brief overview of the Safety Academy and highlight some issues, items that you'll need to know about. Once again, this is District 7 Local Agency Traffic Safety Academy. The main purpose of it is to provide information on safety-related issues to enhance your local safety programs. And we are in the 5th year of the District Safety Academy, and we began the 2017 year on January 18th, and we'll complete it on December 13th with the last webinar for 2017. They are usually scheduled on a Wednesday, and they go from 10 to 12, a 2-hour window. But most topics run between an hour, hour and a half, but they're no more than 2 hours. And the length of the topic will depend on the complexity of it. Also, these links I'm showing are the ones that Anthony has discussed, but you should definitely visit the www.tampabaytrafficsafety.com webpage because it has a lot of information out there. This is the workshop series. As I mentioned today, we're going to have modern roundabouts, but I wanted to also show you all the ones that have been scheduled for this year. And if you look at July 12th, that one is going to be rescheduled for the fall. We've added a new one, 2016 Florida Green Book, which will be August 2nd. And then I wanted everyone to know there's 2 dates that are open, August 30th and September 6th, to be announced. And what we're trying to do is set up one of those dates for Arrive Alive, FHP, RSAs. And then whatever one is still available, then we will move the July 12th one into that was previously scheduled for that. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. The Safety Academy webinars are credits or forms are submitted for AICP credits, and the one for today will be submitted, and one for last time will also be submitted at the beginning of next week. So we're current on all those. Also, if you are a professional engineer and you want your PDHs, then you would go ahead and submit your paperwork going out, downloading the form, the PDH form at this link that Anthony mentioned, which is on the Safety Academy page. And then this is my contact information. If you ever have any questions or want anything clarified, please contact me. With that, I want to mention that we're now going to move into the webinar presentation today by Ken Sides called Modern Roundabouts. And here's a photo of Ken. And he works in Tampa. He's been instrumental in 38 constructed modern roundabouts since '98, mostly as a project manager. He's been on the TRB Roundabout Committee, the ITE Roundabout Committee, and he's published 6 roundabout articles, and he's been Engineer of the Year for 4 years, 2004, 8, 11, and 14. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ken.
Thank you, Dennis. Let's start off with a question.
You should have a prompt on your screen.
I'll show you.
It's show my screen, okay. But your question comes first.
Yes.
Now, I realize there are some rooms with more than one people, so whoever's at the keyboard can answer for the room. How do you feel about modern roundabouts? You hate them? Are you dubious, suspicious, or dislike them? Neutral? Like, or do you love them? 20 seconds. Okay.
Share that.
What about that little, yeah. Okay, we have a good spread of opinion here. Definitely some folks who are dubious or not liking them right now. And look at that, a quarter of the respondents love modern roundabouts. So this is pretty interesting. Let's go on to the next question. How much do you know about modern roundabouts? Not much, some, enough to explain them to the public, a lot, or I am an experienced roundabout designer. 10 seconds. So, if you're in a room, just put down the most experienced person in the room, if you would, please. Okay, good. It looks like half of us are at least able to attend a public meeting and talk to members of the public and other stakeholders such as business persons, fire chief, police chief, and so forth, citizens group, et cetera, homeowners associations. Thank you very much. And we do have some experienced roundabout designers in the audience. I am not a roundabout designer. I've been involved in roundabouts for since 1998 now. So you designers may know more about designing roundabouts than I do. Anyway, a good reason to know about modern roundabouts is because everybody's asking them about them these days, and you may find yourself in conversations where you wish you knew just a little bit more. Planners are coming to engineers and saying, hey, what's the deal? We've been reading in the APA journal and other planning magazines, hearing from our planner colleagues across the country that they're doing roundabouts. What's the deal? Developers are starting to add roundabouts to their projects. And of course, other traffic engineers, other engineers, and maybe more important, engineering managers may be coming to you and asking about roundabouts. Certainly politicians, city officials, pedestrians. Now, pedestrians, bicycles, skaters, non-motorized users are quite interested, and they ask questions. Environmentalists, because modern roundabouts can reduce, in some cases, emissions, including greenhouse gases, typically 20 or 30%. Depends very much upon the site. Could be 0, but it could be as much as 50% in some cases. Supra software, by the way, can be used to model that. Special populations like vulnerable users, we'll be talking about that a little bit later, citizens group, and schools. So far, I've put 2 roundabouts in front of schools, and if we have time, we'll go into that as well. My slide is not, there we go. What is a modern roundabout not? It's not a traffic circle like you see here. It's not a traffic circle like you see here in DC or St. Ormond's Circle on outside Sarasota. These are not modern roundabouts. Notice there's parking in the outer rim. You don't have yield control at all the entry points and so forth. Traffic circles can be just about anything. And modern roundabouts are not like the rotaries you have up in New England states. Those rotaries are big, they're fast, they're scary, they're dangerous, They're high speed, and because of that, they have severe crashes. And you'll have lots of folks say, well, you know, I hate roundabouts. We had those up in New England, and everybody hates them. And that's true. And those are being replaced, in many cases, by modern roundabouts. Modern roundabouts are compact and low speed. Let's take a look at this rotary that's being replaced by a modern roundabout, which is that size. Here we go, under construction. See the difference? Much more compact. As a result, much lower speeds. I'll get into that.
Poll questions.
Oh, sorry. So let's go back to a poll question. I have to give you a little more warning. How many modern roundabout projects have you been instrumental in? None so far, none yet. One so far, between 2 and 5, 5 and 20, more than 20. By instrumental, I mean, you know what I mean by that. An active role, not necessarily the designer by any means. There are a lot of people who play instrumental roles in roundabouts, public outreach, other design besides the geometrics, project management, funding, dealing with the public and so forth. Okay, I guess we have enough. Wait, we still got a couple more people. Okay, let's show the results. All right, so lots of folks have not yet been involved in a modern roundabout project. So this is good because I'll show you some interesting things you might find useful later on. And oops, what happened to those?
You want to show this again?
Yeah, I didn't quite finish. Sorry. Okay, and so we do have some limited experience. So let's continue, Dennis. Thanks. All right. So there's a final topic there, and
who are you with?
This is good. Okay, who are you with? District 7, other districts, another governmental agency, private sector, or other. If you're in a room, maybe you're all in the same agency. Okay, let's see our polling results. Not too many folks from District 7, or even DOT. Okay, good, great. Other agencies and the private sector, good, good. All right, next slide, please. Is that me?
One more.
Okay. One more polling question. Have you personally driven through a modern roundabout? Not a rotary, not a traffic circle. No, not yet. Or yes, but I did not note the speed of my vehicle. Or finally, yes, and I or someone in the car did observe for me the speed of my vehicle in the circulating lane. 10 seconds. I'm watching the percent voted. Okay, 80% have voted, and oh great, a third of us have noted our speed in the circulating lane of a modern roundabout. That's great, because I'll be speaking to that. Let's go. Okay, good. What?
The question.
Are we done?
Oh, yeah.
Good, thanks, Dennis. Anthony, sorry. Okay, so you'll notice that this is modern roundabouts are much more compact, so that's part of the secret to low speed, and we're going to talk about more of that in a minute. Let's get some perspective here. More than 10 years ago, US DOT and NCHRP and American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, in cooperation with Austroads, which is the traffic organization in Australia, did a study to see why Australia has managed to cut their roadway fatalities in half. I'm sorry, I touched the button there. Okay, whoops. So let's see what they found. Back in early part of the 80s, both countries were at about the same. And both countries experienced a decline until about 1985, and then a funny thing happened on the way. From then until 2003, Australia cut their highway deaths per 100,000 population in half, but the United States did not. So this tells us two things. It can be done because Australia did it, and we haven't done it. We're in Tampa Bay here, so I want to show this record of studies starting back in 1998. The mean streets reports show the Tampa Bay metropolitan statistical area. That would be both city of Tampa, Clearwater, and St. Petersburg, and that whole area, aggregated data, were the worst in the country. Same again in 2000, the worst for pedestrian and bicycle hazards and general unpleasantness. Federal Highway Study in 2003 found Tampa Bay area, or Tampa, was #1 the worst in the country, 2003. STPP study, again, Tampa Bay, #1. 2003, another study found Florida was the most deadly for older drivers. In 2004, mean streets again, same methodology, found that Tampa Bay was second worst in the country. This is not good. This is not just one study. So, what happened in 2011? Transportation for American Organization study found that Tampa Bay was #2. And, do you have a question?
Pull after this.
Right now?
After this, after the map.
After the map? Okay, good. So this is a 2011 article from New York Times. I showed a map. You'll notice that the black solid squares are the most dangerous. And you'll notice that 4 of those, 1, 2, 3, and 4th worst in the United States are here in Florida. And you'll notice that Orlando, Kissimmee, and Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater are the worst in the entire country, coming through to 2011. There we are. In 2000, do you have a question? Okay. About how many people die every year at intersections in the United States? Take a guess if you don't know, please. Okay, some people are still responding. All right, we have 81% responders. Let's see how it comes out. Oh, it didn't. So the answer is about 8,000. About 8,000 people die every year at conventional intersections in the United States. Okay. In 2015, there were about 2.5 million crashes at conventional intersections in the United States, at which 8,446 persons lost their lives. Whoops. You have to tell me ahead of time, sorry. Okay, so what is the value that Florida DOT assigns to the cost of a fatal crash? 50,000, 100,000, $250,000, $1 million, $10 million. All right, 80% voted. And thank you very much. Most people think it's around $1 million. $1 million is a lot of money for one fatal crash. Let's take a look. This is, it's online, memo from 2014 from Florida Department of Transportation. And you'll notice a fatal crash as a cost to society of $10,100,000. $10,100,000 comprehensive crash cost for fatal crashes. That's the Florida DOT figure. By the way, you'll notice that severe injury expenses, costs are also, although not nearly as high, are also almost $1 million. And of course, there are many severe injuries at conventional intersections in the United States. So what can we do with those numbers? Let's do some math. Let's multiply the number of fatal injuries times the costs. It's cost per crash, so this is kind of not quite apples and oranges. But you get a figure of $85 billion. $85 billion. So we're talking a lot of money here. I just want to emphasize that. So this is a problem. This is a problem. What can we do about it? Oh, was there a toll? Okay, tolling question. This is a two-part question because you may have to answer other for the first question. By what percentage, because it goes up to, I don't know, 80 or 90 or 100%. Part A, by what percentage does the federal highway say modern roundabouts reduce fatalities? 10%, 20, 30, or 40, or some other figure? By what percentage does the Federal Highway Administration say modern roundabouts reduce fatalities? Well, we'll wait till we get at least 80% votes this day.
They see the polling results. They do not see them live as they're happening.
Okay, I'll show the answers. All right, most people think that the Federal Highway Administration said that modern roundabouts reduce fatalities by about 38%. It's a two-part question. Let's go on to the next part. And part B gives everybody who voted other to only those people, about 31% have voted other. Please select one of these. Hopefully one of these is what you had in mind. 50, 60, 70, 80, or 90%. I didn't put 100% because that's not really feasible. Okay, in this group, 60 and 80% are the most preferred choices. Thanks very much. The Federal Highway Administration says, and I quote, roundabouts reduce fatalities by more than 90%. More than 90%. So we have a big problem. And this is a very large number here. That's huge. In any other field, this would be a very big deal. Agriculture, shipping, aviation, manufacturing, football, in any other field of endeavor, surgery, a 90% reduction in fatalities would be huge. And I think it should be a big deal in the transportation engine, field as well. And Federal Highway also says that modern roundabouts reduce injuries by 76%. Now, there's a little more to this than that. Nobody has measured, there's really not a good measure of severity of injuries. But I can tell you, for reasons that will become clear sooner, that modern roundabouts reduce the frequency of severe injuries dramatically, substantially, but also the severity of injuries, as well as the number of injuries. And the reason for that is low speeds, and we'll get to that in a minute. But while we're on the subject of numbers, everybody remember they had to take engineering, all you engineers, all you PEs, all you EITs, all had to take engineering economics, right? Maybe not with this textbook. So we're not afraid of a little math. And there's the formula for life cycle costs, simple formula. There's benefit cross ratio. I did one of my projects a few years ago. It was a corridor project with 4 roundabouts, and I came up with about 34.5%. So a part of this is because of that cost of fatalities. If you have reason to believe that converting an intersection from conventional to modern roundabout will reduce a prior history of crashes, particularly severe crashes with severe injuries, and especially with fatalities. If you plug those numbers into a benefit cost ratio formula, you may see a very large benefit cost ratio, perhaps 30 or more. And if you can reasonably expect that some of those types of crashes would not occur if you converted the intersection. Or if you're looking at a new intersection and you want to compare what you would expect with conventional versus what you would expect with a modern roundabout, you might come up with a very high benefit cost ratio. Now, of course, these savings do not accrue to the departmental budget. The savings accrue to society. So you're not going to be able to spend that, that savings money on your next project. But engineers and planners are supposed to care about all of society, and that's, I think, part of the reason why DOT issued the memo that I showed you a few slides back. Okay, so lots of people know Larry Hagan, especially in District 7 at least. He's the traffic safety guru. Larry, where are you? There he is. There's Larry, and I think he might be signed on. I don't think he knew I was going to use this, but he did give me permission to use his material. And Larry has done us a favor by looking up stuff for us in the Highway Safety Manual, and he presented some very interesting material at the Florida Section ITE conference in Naples a few weeks ago. He showed this sample problem from the Highway Safety Manual, and he brought our attention to the top line, where the countermeasure was a single lane roundabout. Does anything stand out at you, Larry asked. Yes, the answer that he showed us was that top line, single line roundabout, much higher present value of crash reduction there. And the cost of that project was very much in the middle of all the other projects that were compared in this HSM sample problem 8-4. So it's not just Ken Sykes talking. This is the ACM manual that gives this example. And here we go again, same problem. And once again, you see that the single lane roundabout project is way ahead of all the other projects that happen to be included in this ACM sample problem 8-4. There we go. This is a little town in Italy. They have about 30 circular intersections. This is sort of a modern roundabout, not quite how I would have it designed, but I want to illustrate that the vehicles that are entering this roundabout on the right have horizontal deflection. Drivers will slow down for horizontal deflection. They won't slow down because it says slow or speed limit. They won't slow down because there's children playing right next to the curb, but drivers will invariably slow down for horizontal deflection, and that is one of the secrets of speed control of modern roundabouts. Okay? By the way, notice that the crosswalk is right there, and so speeds at the crosswalk are going to be low because this driver is slowing down in advance of the horizontal deflection. That means at this conflict point between vehicles and pedestrians, speeds will be low. More on that later. Notice that the vehicles exiting do not experience horizontal deflection. It looks sort of like a slingshot there. So these speeds at this crosswalk will be higher for those pedestrians, and they will be more at risk for injury. By the way, you probably know all the parts of modern roundabout, but in the splitter island there is a nice pedestrian refuge. In the United States now, that would be at grade so that folks in wheelchairs can roll right across. And I just want to point out, by the way, that this is, again, a circular intersection, maybe not a pure modern roundabout as we see it today, but I just want to point out that because of these low speeds, life is much tamer in the immediate vicinity. And next to a roundabout can be a nice place to read the paper and feed the pigeons and enjoy life, which you probably wouldn't do next to a signalized intersection. Anyway, let's talk about speed control some more. This is a roundabout here in Tampa. It's a nice looking roundabout. Notice that it has a trolley track right next to it. So if somebody says, hey, can you put a roundabout next to a track? The answer is, well, you can if you design it correctly, quite possibly, depending, but it's certainly not out of the question to be considered. Anyway, not much horizontal deflection there. So if you go drive this roundabout yourself, I think you'll see that the speeds are somewhat higher because of the lack of or less horizontal deflection on some of those legs. This roundabout is just west of the stadium on Dale Mabry, just south of the HCC campus and just north of the airport, the runway there. You may not know it's there, but the very large semi trucks go through there on their way to the hangars delivering big parts. If you drive this, you will probably find that your speeds are in the neighborhood of 15 miles per hour in the circulating lane and around 16 at the crosswalks. But don't take it from me. Go drive these yourself and prove to yourself that speed control really works. This is a nice rural roundabout. It's north of Tampa in Odessa, and that's the way it was. Stop controlled on all three legs. The county, Hillsborough County, was concerned about safety. This is a safety project. They knew there was going to be more volume in the future. But how would they do the speed control? Because you'll notice that this is really a straight shot going south and north down to south. How did they do that? Here's the roundabout they built there. It's in operation now. This was done by Vermeil Crawford, Inc. While Joe Vermeil was still with us. And you'll notice it's not actually a roundabout, and that there is deflection for traffic going southbound, because that's actually an ellipse. It's an ellipsabout, and that's one of the tricks you can use for speed control or just to fit into a site. That's the truck apron. This is also an ellipsabout. Oh, I'm sorry, this wrong project. This is downtown Tampa. I like to call this the Florida Aquarium roundabout. It's a constrained site. It's got a garage on one side for the Port Authority and the aquarium and the cruise ships, which are behind us, behind the camera here. And if you go there and you stand on the northeast corner near those railroad tracks, those trolley tracks, I think you will see, as I have, that the speeds are rather high coming out of this roundabout northbound. Perhaps because the circulating lane is wide enough for 2 lanes, but it's not marked for 2 lanes. Whatever the reason, you can go see this for yourself and drive it for yourself and see what you think. These are on 40th Street, just down the road from District 7 headquarters. If you haven't driven this, I recommend this corridor of 3 roundabouts that are all 2-lane roundabouts. And these are figures which were shown by Gene Duncan at the City of Tampa at last year's FDOT District Safety Academy. I borrowed this slide, and notice that the crash reduction already is very substantial. So if you'd like your next intersection, and it's going to need to be a 2-lane roundabout, and you'd like to see far fewer crashes, consider looking into these roundabouts by the City of Tampa and go drive them if you're at District 7, and look at your speedometer while you're in the circulating lane, look at your speedometer or have someone look at them while you're crossing the pedestrian crosswalks, and email me and tell me what those speeds are. Don't take it from me, but when I drive that, my circulating speed is around 15 miles an hour, and my speeds are crosswalks are about 16 or 17 miles an hour. But you go see what your field observations are. Let's see, going the wrong way here. All right, this is my second roundabout. So in Clearwater Beach, no, it's not the big entryway roundabout that was so controversial back at the turn of the millennium in 2000 when we opened it. That was my personal roundabout baptism by fire. That roundabout is up there, as you may know. We had problems, but then we tweaked it, and it's better now. This roundabout in the foreground is the Clearwaters in my second roundabout. in spite of all the bad press from the first roundabout, the entryway roundabout, the folks who live and work on Clearwater Beach and who must drive the entryway roundabout every single day just to get from one end of the island to the other, not to mention back to the mainland, came to the city of Clearwater and said, we want another roundabout on our beach. And thus, this roundabout was created. This is, I call it the Acacia Roundabout because the cross street is Acacia Roundabout. Here's a close-up of it. You notice, let me point out some features here. There is the crosswalk, which goes through the Splitter Island. I like to emphasize my crosswalks at roundabouts visually with some sort of paver bricks or other visual enhancement to help define a zone where it's okay for pedestrians to be so that everybody understands they have a right to be there. That's the Splitter Island. It can be mountable if you like. If the quarters are tight and trucks need to get through there, you can have a mountable 3-inch Splitter Island instead of a 6-inch reveal, and that's a possibility to keep in mind. This is only 14 feet, so pedestrians are only exposed for 14 feet, and then they have a refuge, and then another 14 feet exposure, and this traffic is moving quite slowly. At this roundabout, I've driven it and ridden in vehicles many, many times. The speeds of the crosswalks are around 16 miles per hour. Notice we have bus stops and trolley stops on both sides. Is that a good idea? Well, go for see for yourself. Trolleys and buses come along all the time. You'll be able to observe for yourself. But I say yes, because again, a well-designed modern roundabout is a low-speed environment. Everyone who uses transit is before and after a pedestrian or bicyclist. And what do pedestrians and bicyclists need? Low-speed environments, and modern roundabouts can provide that. But you might say, wait, what about when the trolley is stopped there? Won't there be a blockage and backing up in the roundabout? Yes, there will be, but again, you can go observe for yourself, and you'll see that it has not a problem. Most people get on and off the bus very quickly. It takes a little longer to put a bike or take it off the front of a bus, but these delays are quite brief, so it's okay to have transit in close proximity to a modern roundabout, in my opinion. There's our horizontal deflection. Go try it for yourself. Look at your speedometer, see what you say, send me an email. 16 miles an hour is what I think you might see. And yes, I usually observe 11 to 13 miles per hour in the circulating lane. And the exercise I like to do with engineering and planner tourists who have accompanied me, I may not be driving, is when there's no one around to go around and around the roundabout, gradually increasing speed to the point where the people in the car say, okay, that's fast enough. You can do this yourself and see what the maximum comfortable speed is in a 1- or 2-lane modern roundabout. And I think that speed will probably be 17 miles per hour maximum. And the reason why I do this with my tours is because before we walk about the roundabout, I want them to understand viscerally, in their gut, that truly most people are going to go 13, 14, 15, and 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 miles per hour, at most 17 miles an hour through a modern roundabout. They need to understand the speeds really are that low and believe it. If you're in a Miata or you borrowed your Maserati from your dad that weekend, you might go a little faster, but probably not much. This is the senior staff for District 1. Billy Hadaway brought them over there while he was district secretary.
I'll have a question after this.
Thank you. And this is the same roundabout. And they're looking at, by the way, you might notice everybody, most people gave it a thumbs up. I take a lot of groups to these roundabouts, and at some point I usually ask them. You'll notice they're standing in the middle of the intersection. You would not normally do that at a conventional intersection, but it's possible here again because the speeds are low. You'll notice this is a 3-inch reveal, but with a hard shine on the outer truck apron. Set's gone to a much softer shine there. It's a 2-inch rise, a soft radius, another 1-inch rise over the next 9 inches, and that is the FDOT Type RA curve. You can look it up, and and it's very useful. I've been using that ever since. Anyway, the day we opened this roundabout that I'm talking about, the residents showed up, but not with pitchforks. They showed up and they threw a street party to celebrate the opening of this intersection. How many of you have had that happen at one of your intersections? How many times have stakeholder residents donated money for your intersection project? In this case, residents donated $3,000.
Hard zero.
I think so. Okay.
Show the next one. Close share.
So that was, that's happened to a few people, but mostly not. And how many times have residents thrown street parties to celebrate your intersection project? Once, never, once, twice, 3 times, or 4 or more times.
So there's a few 4 more times. So
yeah,
curious
we
to
do.
know what projects those are.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So most of us have not had that pleasure. I've had it only one time for me. But my point here is that it's unusual. It's unusual to see this happen. But it did happen with the roundabout project. I'm back. So here they are celebrating their intersection at a street party. And there they are. They brought bikes and beverages with them. And you notice this person has white hair. The demographics of Clearwater Beach are that the proportion of population age 65 or older is 2.5 times the national average. Now, the folks who live in this district to the north donated this sign, and so they put their identifier. So this is an identity marker for them. The problem was that the commercial district is behind the camera, and folks who were partying would wander up into their neighborhood and not want to be there, and the residents don't want them there. A lot of people were making U-turns at this intersection, so the neighborhood wanted a demarcation so people would know this was a residential zone, and they wanted safe U-turns for people to go back to the fun district, and they wanted a low-speed intersection because they walk and bike and skate through this intersection on their way to the beach. So this and so you can use modern roundabouts as gateways to districts, not just residential, but could be an arts district, could be a business district, could be a neighborhood revitalization district, and so forth. So think of that. And by the way, you'll notice that in the center of my roundabouts, I'd like to put a cluster of reclinatas. That's a cluster of stems. It's one plant. It looks great from day one and fills up the space, and it looks great from then on. I did plant one oak tree on one, but it's going to be about 30 years before it really fills up the space there. And I uplight these vertical features at night so the drivers see them ahead of time. I like to put vertical features in my roundabouts because I think that drivers notice maybe a block ahead of time that there's something in the middle of the road up ahead, and perhaps they stop accelerating at that point and begin to focus on what they're coming to. They might even think it's a T intersection. Anyway, not only did the residents put that sign in, and they paid for it on this roundabout, there it is, but you'll notice there are red bows on the sign and poinsettias. They, at the holidays, come and plant these. Why is the slide coming up? No. So this, again, is very unusual. Usually, stakeholders don't show up at the holidays and put red bows on your intersection project or plant plants. So that's a good thing. So our roundabout's right for older users. Let's take a look at the population in the United States. About 12.5% is 65 and older, 16% younger than 16, too young to drive, and maybe 3 or 4 or 5% can't drive, won't drive, or choose not to. That comes to somewhere between a quarter and a third of the U.S. population, not in what I'll call their driving prime, between 16 and 65. In other words, not like us. So if you're designing for yourself and people just like you, you're leaving out somewhere between a fourth and a third of the population. That's not good engineering. So be keenly aware that not everybody is in the prime of their driving years. Let's take a look at children first and youngsters. This is an elementary school. It's one of two one-lane modern roundabouts I put in front of schools. The other is in front of an elementary school, both in Clearwater. And we discovered, we didn't know this would happen, we discovered that crossing guards love the splitter island because they can control traffic and they control the youngsters much better there. They also have the option of being at either end of the crosswalk, but they really like that pedestrian refuge on the splitter island. So that's interesting and useful to know. So modern roundabouts at schools are A-OK in my view. Now this is the forest data, federal forest data, and that's the bathtub you see for fatal crashes per 100 million miles as plotted against age. Okay, those are the teen years from, and older, from 16 to 30. Drivers are very dangerous during those years. If you have kids, you might want to show them this. Not that they will listen, but this probably comes no surprise to anybody. And there's the middle years where it's much safer. But at age 59, there's an inflection point, and then a second inflection point at age 65. So that's why I choose age 65 as being no longer in the prime. Now, by the way, this doesn't mean drivers at fault by age. This is just involvement in fatal crashes. And of course, older persons are more fragile, so that alone would cause the curve to go up, and it goes very high with advanced age. But be aware that older roadway users are at increasing risk, and you see some of these stats here. I'm not going to read them all, but they're substantial older driver involvement in crashes, and you see older drivers are about twice as likely to be killed while going through an intersection. Drivers 85 years of age and older are more than 10 times as likely to have multi-vehicle intersection crashes. AASHTO Green Book says there is agreement that elderly road users require mobility and that they should be accommodated by the highway's design and operational characteristics to the greatest extent practical. Thus, designers and engineers should be aware of the problems and the requirements of the elderly and consider applying applicable measures to aid their performance. And I suggest that modern roundabouts can play a role in what AASHTO is telling us we must do. What older drivers need, and there are many, many capabilities we have that for most of us will diminish with age. Depth perception, visual acuity, dynamic acuity, static acuity, stiffness of necks, ability to judge distance, and PRT time for perception and judgment and reaction all decline with age for most people. And I can give a whole presentation on that if anybody's interested. Just send me an email. There's a lot to it, a lot more detail. But basically, an older-friendly intersection gives everybody more time to perceive and evaluate, more time to make decisions, and more time to take action. Now, I think I may have mentioned earlier that modern roundabouts can, and in my view, should be designed for low vehicle speeds. What that means is that everything plays out in slow motion. So everyone has more time to do PRT, and if the other driver makes a mistake, other drivers have time to adjust. And older drivers need reduced demands to accurately judge gaps in fast oncoming traffic. And of course, there is no fast oncoming traffic at modern roundabouts. Circulating speeds are like around perhaps 15 to 20 miles per hour, maybe 25 in some cases. And older drivers need less complicated situations to interpret. I think I have a slide on complexity. Finally, a lot of older persons experience stiffness with necks. It's hard for them to scan 90 degrees to the left, 90 degrees to the right, but with a modern roundabout, as you approach, you need only to look about 30 degrees to your left. So let's take a look here. This approaching driver to conventional intersection has to look very far to either side. Nobody does. Look at yourself next time you're going through a green light. Did you look hard either way? Well, no. You probably didn't have nearly enough time to. Of course not. Approaching a modern roundabout at low speeds, you only need to look where the threat is, which is off to your left about 30 degrees. Back at our training roundabout here, drivers looking straight ahead at the pedestrians, by the way, in the near or in the crosswalk. Vehicle approaches, looks to the left for any oncoming traffic in the circulating lane. And by the way, drivers usually seem to look right here, and I recommend you stand around at a roundabout, a modern roundabout, and look at drivers' heads, because these aren't just autonomous vehicles, not yet. These are drivers behaving in their vehicles. And I think you will see about 80% of the drivers swivel their heads 30 degrees to the left and look right about at this point in the approach. But you can go see this for yourself. So this is classic pedestrian crash number 1. It's a signalized intersection. Along you come, and you're planning to make a right turn. Along comes a pedestrian who's planning to cross the street. Where are you looking? You're looking to the far left, of course, for any oncoming threats. You're not looking at that pedestrian who may not even be able to see you if there's glare on the windshield. Pedestrian steps in front of your vehicle as you begin to move into the gap between oncoming cars. That's the classic pedestrian crash at a conventional intersection. Pedestrian is at risk from right-turning vehicles. Can that happen at a modern roundabout? No, it can't. Classic pedestrian crash number 2. Here you are to signalize, there's our pedestrian, wants to cross the street. Along you come. You want to make a left turn. Where are you going to look? Well, you're going to look for that truck that might be coming, of course. You're not looking at the crosswalk or the pedestrian, not yet, because you have to accurately judge the gap in oncoming traffic. If you don't, you'll die. You'll be T-boned, possibly. So you look there, of course, in case there's oncoming traffic. And then you make your move, at which point you discover, oh my gosh, there's a pedestrian in the crosswalk who is at risk from left-turning vehicles. Can this happen at modern roundabouts? No, it cannot. So the 2 classic pedestrian crashes are eliminated by design from modern roundabouts. Here we are. There you are approaching. Ta-da! Pardon these graphics, I made them myself. And you'll go to where you have to stop to yield to circulating traffic. You'll notice, by the way, the pedestrians are not in front. They're crossing behind you. So they are not at risk so this is a good thing. Now we have a polling question. What's the survival rate for a pedestrian struck by a vehicle traveling at 50 miles per hour? Is it 50%? Survival, 60, 70, 80, or 90% for pedestrians hit by vehicles at 20 miles per hour? If you don't know, please guess. All right, that's 50 votes. And they're spread evenly. One more question? Okay. At what speed does only 1 out of 10 struck pedestrians survive? At 20, 30, 40, 50, or 60 miles per hour? In other words, a 90% fatality rate. for pedestrians truck at what speed? If you don't know, please take a guess. Okay, that's 80% votes. And the responses are spread fairly evenly across the spectrum for both of these. So what that tells us is that most of us really don't know, but you will. You will shortly. This isn't rocket science, and at the end of this presentation, you'll know more about modern roundabouts than, I don't know, 90 or 99% of the traffic engineers in the United States. Okay, is it back to me? All right. This is a slide that Billy Hadaway likes to show in his presentations, of which he's given, while he was secretary, I think almost 200. And it shows that pedestrian hit at 20 miles an hour has a good chance of survival, 9 out of 10. Actually, there's another study I'll show in a minute that gives 95% survival. So in any case, the point here is if you can keep vehicle speeds down to 20 miles an hour or lower where there are pedestrians, that is a wonderful thing for pedestrians in case of a crash. At 30 miles per hour, half those pedestrians are going to die. And at 40 miles an hour, 90% of pedestrians will die. 40 miles an hour is not very fast. I go 40 miles an hour all the time. That's a fairly moderate speed in a modern car, I would say. Not really high speed at all, but for pedestrians, it's lethal. This is the other study. This is actually sort of a meta-study that NHTSA did. They looked at quite a few studies and combined the results, and they came up with almost the same numbers as the graph by Billy Hadaway, but slightly different. At 20 miles per hour by this study, the news is even better for pedestrians. But at 30 miles an hour, 8 times as many fatalities, and at 40, only 20% survive, or 10% by the study that Billy showed. So you get the general picture here, which is it is tremendously advantageous for pedestrians to be in the presence of vehicles that are going slowly. Now, we all know straight streets are crowned, so the stormwater will run off. If it's asphalt, you need about a 2% slope. If it's concrete, it could be slightly less. There goes the runoff. But high-speed curves, like an interstate, are banked into the curve so that the curve is comfortable for drivers and occupants. That's called super elevation. You see it there. Drains all the way to the inside, not to either side. Okay. Speedways, even bicycle racetracks have super elevation. But what if we were to, and drain to the inside, what if we were to reverse that and have negative super elevation? What would it be like to drive on a street like that? Okay, go ahead. How many of the secrets to roundabout speed control can you name? Quickly. 10 seconds. Okay, so good. I've already given away 2 of them, which was horizontal deflection, and we're about to see secret number 2 here. Actually, and so that would be negative super elevation. So modern roundabouts have 3 times that horizontal deflection. As you enter, as you circulate, and as you exit, horizontal deflection 3 times. Also, negative super elevation. So when you're going around the circulating lane, the roadway is banked to the outside of the curve, not the inside, at 2% slope. And if you do a walkabout, which I hope you will do, you can see this for yourself. In driving, that slight 2% slope is enough to make it uncomfortable and it's not uncomfortable, but it feels like you're going faster than you are. And so everybody just naturally goes low speed by design, by good design. You can control speed by good modern roundabout design. And finally, I think that putting a vertical feature in the central island helps as well. And then there are soft elements like landscaping and paver breaks and all sorts of things like that, traffic calming stuff. Now we have a polling question. Go ahead. What's the equation for kinetic energy? I should mention that I had to look this up.
Like you're studying for your PE, John, you know?
Okay, so you won't find the equation in AASHTO, the Bible for roadway designers. You won't find it in PPM. You won't find it in the MUTCD. But you will find it in your high school physics book. So what is it anyway? It's not any of these. But first, so kinetic energy, of course, is the energy possessed by a body in motion. It's not the same as potential energy. That's the energy of something that you're about to drop on the floor. And kinetic energy equals 1/2 the mass of the body, the vehicle, times the speed or velocity squared. Yes, squared. That's probably the 35% who thought the equation was something else. So the kinetic energy increases as the second exponent of the velocity. And we know those curves go up very quickly, very quickly. Now, kinetic energy is the energy that is dissipated in a crash. The more kinetic energy, the more severe the crash. So the severity of a crash goes up exponentially with speed. It's not linear. So that speedometer on your car, which is a linear readout, is actually quite misleading when it comes to this. And I can imagine a second instrument that tells you the kinetic energy your vehicle currently has. Anyway, let's run the numbers. So let's say the speed is 15 miles an hour, like it might be in a modern roundabout, a one-laner, slightly higher in a two-laner. We'll give that a value of kinetic energy of, say, 1. And twice the speed, square, that's 4 times the kinetic energy. At 45 miles an hour, which is not very fast to go through an intersection, 9 times the kinetic energy. And how many of us on our way to work today went through intersections at 60 miles an hour, carrying 16 times the kinetic energy as you would if you were going through a modern roundabout? So Billy Hadaway uses this slide. He likes to quote from AASHTO, where it says, every effort should be made to use as high a design speed as practical to attain a desired degree of safety, mobility, and efficiency. And if you read the foreword to AASHTO, and I don't know if anyone has except me, you will see that AASHTO says that this 1,000-page book is all about mobility for motorized users. It says that. You can read it. I don't have that slide. And versus the new philosophy that Billy tried to bring to the Florida DOT, which is to select a desired speed based on the context. What's around? Is it rural? Is it suburban, like that roundabout in Odessa I showed you? Or is it suburban or downtown? Go ahead. Have you personally driven a vehicle through a modern roundabout fast enough to determine your maximum comfortable speed? System lags. Okay, that's, people are still voting, or the system's still calculating, crunching the numbers.
Pretty close to 50-50.
Yeah, let's go. Okay, so about half of us have, and that's great. That's excellent. I'm a great believer in engineers going out in the field. So, AASHTO says drivers often commit errors when they have to perform several highly complex tasks at the same time under extreme time pressure. For example, in that classic pedestrian crash number 2, where you're fixing to make a left turn against oncoming traffic and you've got to judge the gap just right, or else you and your passengers will be T-boned. AASHTO says speed reduces the visual field, restricts the peripheral vision, and limits the time available to receive and process information, and I might add, to make the right judgment. That's AASHTO speaking. I want to emphasize speed, time pressure, and complexity. Modern roundabouts solve all 3 of these dilemmas. The converse, you could say, is that low speeds give more time to everybody, motorists, pedestrians, drivers making mistakes, drivers compensating for other drivers making mistakes. And also, modern roundabouts have much less complexity. Let's look at the rules for a signalized intersection versus the rules for a one-lane roundabout. I just wrote these down one day. You can do the same thing. I came up with 21 rules. It would be more rules now that we have blinking yellow lights like you see down on Platt Street. So a lot of rules for signalized intersections. But for one-lane modern roundabouts, there's only one rule. Yield to traffic. Approaching traffic, cars, vehicles should yield to traffic already in the roundabout. Much simpler. And also, the rules, who has the right of way, changes at signalized intersections every few seconds. And you have to watch the colored balls to keep track of who can go next. At a modern roundabout, it never changes. The vehicles in the roundabout, in the circulating lane, always have the right of way at all times. Polling question. How many conflict points are there at a 4-legged single lane roundabout? This question was contributed by Larry Hagan. I hope he gives the right answer if he's watching this. Maybe he should not be allowed to answer because that would be cheating. Will the polling results be available to everybody afterwards?
We can make them available.
Okay.
But we typically, no one's asked for them in the past.
Yeah, well, we do that. Part of the fun. Okay, that's 80% voted. And the numbers are all over. I should have defined conflict point ahead of time. That's where the path of moving objects intersects, either 2 vehicles, or a vehicle and a bike, or a vehicle and a pedestrian. All right. Let's see, moving forward. This diagram was drawn a long time ago by Michael Walworth, engineer in Orange Park, to south of Jacksonville. Those arrows are true traffic at a conventional intersection. And you'll notice the conflict points are T-bone collisions, and there's 4 of them. T-bone collisions are lethal. It's not unusual for everybody in the receiving vehicle to be severely injured or die. Very, very serious crashes. There's the right turning movements. There are the left turning movements. And here are all the rest of the conflict points, okay? If you draw the diagram this way, and you could do it yourself with a napkin, you'll probably come up with something like 32 conflict points. These are high-speed conflict points and high angle, head-on being 180 degrees, T-bone collision being 90 degrees, rear ender being 0 degrees. And because they're high speed and high angle, they are high energy crashes and therefore severe crashes. And you'll notice the most lethal crashes, the near head-on crashes and the T-bone crashes, are in the middle. I call that the kill zone. You won't find that in AASHTO either, because I made it up, but that's what I call it. That's where the most lethal crashes are. Is there anything we can do about that? Remember one of the first computer games, well, there was Pong, and then there was Pac-Man. Let's bring Mr. Pac-Man back and have him gobble that up. And what if we designed an intersection and we began with the idea that there wouldn't be any kill zone? We're just not going to have a kill zone, period. No kill zone. What a concept. So here comes Mr. Pac-Man, gobbles up the kill zone, and we start a new diagram. We're going to design an intersection around no kill zone. We'll start with Mr. Pac-Man. We'll build an intersection. There it is, a modern roundabout, entering traffic, circulating, and you could be rear-ended, so that's 4 conflict points as you're waiting at the yield sign. And circulating traffic goes the other way, of course. 4 more conflict points. Now, these conflicts are low-speed merges. Vehicles are going around 15 to 20 miles an hour, and they're at about a 30-degree angle. So these are crunchings of fenders. These are low-energy crashes and exiting vehicles. So there's only 8 conflict points, and they're low speed, they're low angle, therefore they're low energy. I want to stress that nobody dies at 15 miles an hour. Nobody dies. That's a beautiful thing. So we've reduced the conflict points by 3/4, and the crashes that do occur are low energy, mostly. Could be rear-ended. Quickly at pedestrians, you could say there's 24 conflict points, and a modern roundabout, 8. So that's a 2/3 reduction. Again, very significant and substantial. Does AAA Motor Club endorse modern roundabouts? Don't guess. Please either say you don't know or no or yes. So this isn't a test question. So please answer correctly. If you don't know, please just say don't know. What happened? Okay, so about half the people voted, and the answers are some of us know, but not all of us. There's a few more of those. Okay. Does AARP endorse modern roundabouts? If you're age 40 or older, you're going to start getting letters from AARP. So if you don't know, please say don't know. Otherwise, no or yes if you do know the answer. Okay. And we're going to speed things up. All right. So all these organizations strongly endorse modern roundabouts. AAA, AARP, the Institute for Highway Safety, and the Florida DOT. ITE endorses modern roundabouts, maybe not quite as strongly as the others, but they do. All right, so you're in good company if you do. Modern roundabouts are compatible and support the goals, in my opinion, of all these things: road diets, livable communities, smart growth, complete streets, new urbanism, and so forth. And all these folks, I think, can be natural allies for your next modern roundabout projects. Yes, artists, they love the idea of putting something in the middle of the roundabout and around the periphery, and that's being done here in the United States. It's very common, of course, in Europe. New urbanists, smart growth folks, complete street advocates, road diet people, pedestrians, bicycle skaters, AARP, environmentalists, emergency evacuation officials, public health officials, and visionaries. Those are all people that you can bring on board for your next roundabout project, because the roundabout can support their agenda. So they will be interested in your project for their own reasons. So we've got great answers for those folks, and you'll know a lot at the end of this. This is the 2013 Florida Intersection Design Guide, and it produces, you see, very strong support for modern roundabouts. And this is also from the design guide. And there you are, the designer, trying to consider, as it says in the design guide, in general, the intersection guide, roundabouts should be considered under any of the following conditions. And you can see there are a lot of conditions. For example, if a signal is warranted or it's been requested, maybe it's not warranted, but it's been requested. These are all places, access management, context sensitive solutions. Obviously, all new construction and reconstruction, consider the DOT says modern roundabouts there, especially if you have left turn and right angle crashes. Think about a roundabout and on and on. 20 occasions, situations in which you are told to consider a modern roundabout. Here's the railroad track. This is one of my roundabouts in Clearwater. By the way, there's a trail right next to it. You can bicycle to it if you want, like I did the other weekend. Notice the splitter island is like a long tongue. We didn't know how CSX would feel about a roundabout at this, so close to their tracks. And this, by the way, you can't tell from the Google image, but there's quite an upslope up and over these tracks. Anyway, CSX loved the idea because the biggest problem, there's the roundabout, with gates is that people impulsively go around them. And with a long splitter island, people are less likely to give in to impulse because they have to make that decision much further back. So CSX loved the idea. All right, so we will try to get rid of those people. So I say roundabouts at railroads can be A-OK in some situations. All right, you saw this before. Federal Highway says that roundabouts reduce fatalities by more than 90%. So to put it another way, Federal Highway is really saying that conventional intersections kill at 10 times the rate of modern roundabouts. So you might want to think twice and make sure you have your justification well documented if you're at a situation where you just can't build a modern roundabout. Remember the kill zone. So moving right along, are roundabouts right for safety traffic engineers? Yes. Safety reasons. Operational efficiency, just a quick note about that. Modern roundabouts are free-flowing, so you're not going to find yourself sitting there at 11 o'clock at night, nobody else is around, and you're stuck at a red light. So typically at peak hour, a modern roundabout usually gives a 20 to 30% improvement in delay, capacity, level of service. That depends, and there's software to evaluate this, such as Sidra, Rodel, and other softwares, but that's a rule of thumb. Off-peak hour, during the day, modern roundabouts tend to give a pretty nice level of service for motorized vehicles, and of course, at night, a level of service A. And by the way, for pedestrians, level of service, that is delay, for pedestrians is very good under all conditions of vehicle loading. Light, medium, heavy, and very heavy. Pedestrians usually have little or no delay. That's great, not just for pedestrians, but also for safety, because as we see all the time, pedestrians get impatient. They don't wait for the pedestrian head to turn green, and they will run or even push baby carriages. We see this all the time, don't we, across 4-lane and even 6-lane highways. You won't have that happening at modern roundabouts. Oh, and cost, it depends, but a modern roundabout is maybe about the same, a little more, maybe a little less. Depends upon drainage and right-of-way purchasing than a signalized intersection. Polling question. Can road diets and roundabouts go together well? I'm going to skip this. I'll just say that, in my opinion, the answer is yes. And why don't you go back to me?
There you go. 100%. I think we got 2 people answered.
In interest of time, and we're not too many more polling questions left either. Okay, this came out back in 1999 by Peter Lagerwey and Dan Burden. They did 17 case studies, no roundabouts, and they found that road diets were a great thing. And then in 2004, Jennifer Rosales, who's now at San Clemente, I believe, in California, did 6 case studies and came up with a little booklet based on those 6 studies. And she found, for that, she got the 2007 IT Past President's Award for Merit in Transportation Engineering. Her work was recognized. She found that crashes went down, operations, meaning efficiency, delay, capacity, and level of service went up, and livability went way up. And the cover of her book there is exactly as it appears, but by the magic of computers, I can bring out what she put on her cover, which is a modern roundabout, even though none of her case studies included a modern roundabout. So what is that? Is that a road diet? Maybe it's an intersection diet. So I think, in my opinion, that road diets and roundabouts can go together very well. This is downtown Asheville. This intersection is right around the corner from the county building and the city building. Not everybody wants intersections like this downtown anymore because they want vital streets that are vibrant with pedestrians at lunch hour and after 5 o'clock. Would you want to cross this on your way to lunch? Maybe not. In any case, they looked at this and they counted the lanes. Usually in road diets, you count lanes because a lot of road diets involve removing lanes, although not necessarily. They might involve narrowing lanes in order to free up space for bike lanes, bike sidewalks, whatever. Anyway, let's count the lanes, 18. So they had a concept for their downtown, looked like this, made many things possible in a concept. This is that same intersection. They wanted to have landscape median, they wanted to add angled parking for their businesses, or they could stick with what they have now, lots of asphalt. That's the next intersection up, which is signalized. So there's the intersection. They thought, what if we could get rid of all this asphalt? Here's the intersection. It's right now pedestrians have to cross 6 lanes. Okay, there's some of the through lanes they maybe could get rid of, turn lanes they could get rid of because you don't have turn lanes at roundabouts, and maybe they don't need all those through lanes either. There's around 20 or 22,000 vehicles per day peak at this intersection. It is congested. And maybe they could get rid of all those lanes in that direction and also the cross section with this concept. Now I'm going to go back and forth, see where the buildings are. Everything's the same. I matched this up, okay? They thought, what if we could replace this with a modern roundabout and even have bike lanes? Wouldn't that be something? Remember that Frank Zappa song? It can't happen here. Well, maybe it could. Maybe they could have a greener, more business-friendly downtown and much more pedestrian-friendly. This is the same intersection. The trees are now grown, and it looks even better. Pedestrians have to cross only 1 lane, 14 feet. They have a refuge. And look, we now have a bike lane. Bicyclists can divert off to the sidewalks if they want, or they can claim the lane and bike through the roundabout in the middle of their lane, because they may be biking faster than their vehicles, which are going 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, or maybe 20 miles per hour at 2-lane roundabouts. So more bike-friendly too. This is one of the legs for this roundabout. Look how much different it is now than it was. Instead of 18 lanes for this intersection, there's only 8 lanes. There's that bike-friendly bypass lane, and there's a crosswalk, which is a regular crosswalk. Lately, I've been using a high-emphasis crosswalk at my roundabouts and also my trail crossings. This is ordinary thermoplastic, very well understood material. And it retains its very high contrast for many years, for its lifetime. And that's something to consider in special zones. Anyway, let's look at Tampa's newest modern roundabout, which is just north of I-4 in Ybor City, right there. This was designed by one of my coworkers, Greg Trem, designed the geometrics. And you notice it has an obelisk in the middle. This is a historic marker. And to the north is a renovation district, a revitalization district. So a great gateway. You'll notice, by the way, there's that soft outer truck apron curve I was telling you about. And the mayor was present for the ribbon cutting. And there is, at this roundabout, you can see examples of a bike entry ramp and a bike exit ramp. So you can go take a look at those at your lunch hour after work today and see what you think. This is an ellipsabout down in Coral Gables. Notice how constrained the site is. In the back, we have the overhead trial rail. You've got buildings on all the other corners. That's why it's an ellipsabout. It also has a fountain in the middle and also has 6 legs, just like the Big Beach Roundabout that was so controversial when we opened it back at the new millennium in Clearwater. You notice it isn't a 1-lane roundabout, and it's not just a 2-lane roundabout, because it has 1 lane there and 2 lanes here. So you can do that if you need to, and it works just fine. Next time you're in Miami, drive down to Coral Gables, drive for yourself, and see what you think. You can put other things in the middle of the roundabouts. You can celebrate local history, local values, community values, as they do out west. There's a lot of horses and roundabouts out there. And this means it's more than just a car-centric intersection. It's a place that matters to people because it reflects local values. And these roundabouts out there, and this is Avon, look great in the summer, and they look great in the winter. Oh, by the way, those are some ski slopes you see in the background there, the skiers. This is Fort Lauderdale. They love their children, and they love their horses. It's an equestrian community, so this is what they put, ponies with children, in their roundabouts. And don't let anyone tell you that you can't have a pool and a waterfall and a horse in the middle of your next roundabout. You can. By the way, everything's uplighted at these roundabouts by Fort Lauderdale. This is Utah. They're celebrating the Western movement, imminent destiny, back when the country, the continent, this part of the continent was opened up, celebrating local history and values. So this brings other stakeholders into your project and can make a big difference. In Bend, Oregon, they love their roundabout art so much that the Chamber of Commerce will hand you a thick, high-glossy, high-quality brochure, and you can make a game of visiting all their great-looking roundabouts that have public art in the middle, and you answer questions about them, and there's some sort of prize. So they take great pride. Sarasota also has public route, and they're very interested in theirs. This is 5 Points Roundabout in downtown Sarasota. It's a urban setting. This is what it used to look like. As you can see, it was messy. It was 5 points, and nothing special here. And they converted it, but this doesn't really give the full power. So if you want it, this is more what it looks like now. It's become a public place where people go. You notice the intersection, the car part of the intersection doesn't dominate the intersection anymore, and cars are silent when they go slithering through. So now it's possible to meet a friend, have a conversation right next to an intersection, which is also servicing motorized vehicles. They're not sitting there in a queue. Queues tend to vanish with modern roundabouts. If we have time, I've got a slide for that. So in other words, modern roundabouts can be used to create a sense of place. And you can imagine how much more revenue is being generated. And there are restaurants on the other side of this roundabout as well. Next time you're in Sarasota, meet a friend for lunch there or for dinner. See what you think. You don't have to take it from me. And by the way, if you want to take a good picture, take your ladder with you. Get on the top of a 6-foot ladder next to a street light and hang on, and take pictures like this with an 18-millimeter lens, and you'll get a better sense. What?
That's what you did?
Yes. Yeah, I checked out the camera. You can check it out from the University of South Florida if you're a student and you know somebody there. So those are some more tips. So this is a people place, and it's a great place, I think. Go visit it yourself. Notice there's public art, not in the center of the roundabout, but on the periphery. Let's take a look. What do we have here? We have someone who's chosen to read a book sitting right next to an intersection. I should do a polling slide. How many of you decide that you'll go read your book next to a signalized or stop-controlled intersection? Not likely. So this is unusual and gives you a sense of the place. There, at that time, the perimeter was defined by the curb and a potted plant or two. Later on, when I went back, Sarasota had added a more defined perimeter, which is good for the roundabout, but it's also good for the public space, because public spaces, people like to have defined borders. And what should be going on while I was there but a photo session? A journalist from a Spanish-speaking magazine in Manhattan, New York, was there taking photographs of her subject. There's the new potted plant, and there is the subject, a ballerina. So I was going to have a polling question. How many of you have ballerinas posing for journalists at your intersections? But I thought there wouldn't be very many. So you get the idea that this is a very, very different type of intersection that you can create. This was the first really high-profile intersection in the United States. My first project starting in 1998. It's featured on the website up at the USF Engineering School. And by the way, I took that picture from the lift that they used to change the light bulbs at the stadium. So I was 100 feet up on this little platform. And so that's another tip on how to take great pictures of intersections. This was beforehand, those 4 lanes, one way all the way around, so speeds could be high at times, and many walking points, and there were parking lots and a number of other things in the middle. That used to be Highway 60. The state gave this portion of Highway 60 to the city, and the city owned all the property around. So we had lots of flexibility. Beforehand, there were 90 vehicle-vehicle conflict points and 9 intersections, 3 of which were signalized. And that's the roundabout that replaced all of this. It's actually an ellipsabout. And that's what it looks like now. One intersection with only 26 vehicle-vehicle conflict points, a 71% reduction, and the pedestrian conflict points are reduced 43%, and low speeds. And notice the Hiltons in the back. I've taken many groups up on the roof of that. It's a great God's eye view of the operation of the roundabout. Anybody wants to go on a tour, let me know. By the way, this is before trails were such a big deal, but we put them there at this intersection. This is at night. The fountain, of course, is gone now, but you can take great pictures of roundabouts at night, so keep that in mind. This is what a roundabout used to look like in Sarasota, a different downtown. That's what it looks like at dusk, so keep that in mind. You can take terrific pictures of roundabouts after dusk. Okay, this subject is kind of interesting. This is for us in Florida and the other coastal states where we need to evacuate people. And there's Billy Hadaway and the senior group up on the 100 feet up. LK, the current District 1 Secretary, is part of that group, and other senior staff. This is a Google picture. And I had a special arrangement with the management, which has since changed at the Hilton. They would allow me to take a group up on their roof, and then we'd have a security person with us. But you don't need that now. Hooters has built this building, and the second, or better yet, the 3rd floor of Hooters is a great place to watch the roundabout. In fact, it's almost even better than the Hilton in some ways. Anyway, remember Hurricane Charlie back in 2004, 15 fatalities, peak wind of 80 miles per hour, and it was headed, there's Clearwater Beach, it was headed straight for Clearwater Beach, remember that? Now at the last minute, it diverted to where I evacuated to, and it went right over my head in the hotel, but luckily it didn't do much damage that far north. It did a lot more damage to trailer parks further south. Anyway, the challenge for mandatory evacuation of Clearwater Beach was to evacuate the South Beach below the roundabout, okay, to get those people, well, first to get those people out, not just to get those people, but simultaneously to evacuate North Beach, okay? And the way to do that was to counterflow the causeway and also the roundabout. So let's take a look at how that was done. Not by me, but by Paul Bertels. I'll show you in a minute. But anyway, there's the traffic from, we're looking toward the mainland, we're looking east. There's the traffic, normal flow from South Beach, and that's what it was during the evacuation, all right, over the causeway to the mainland. But the rest of the roundabout and the causeway were contraflowed, and all that required was 2 officers there to make sure people turned left. They went the contra way on the roundabout, and 1 officer there for the same reason, and 1 patrol car there to block circulating traffic from going anywhere but off the island. That's all it took. And traffic coming from the north, those arrows, went this way. All right? Worked great. So keep that in mind. These are the folks who get credit, Mike Waters, Paul Bertels, and I think they're still over there. If you see them, congratulate them. So when New Orleans was rebuilt after Katrina, it would have been a great opportunity to convert some of those signalized intersections to modern roundabouts. And for these reasons, modern roundabouts continue to operate normally when the power's off, and this is a good thing. In Florida, I think you could say they are fail-safe. This is a brochure, we've got 20 minutes left, from Carmel, Indiana. And the reason they built their roundabouts are to improve the quality of life. Safety and operations were secondary. And they've built more than 100 roundabouts, and their population is about 100,000. So rounding off, there's 1 roundabout for every 1,000 residents. Keep that in mind, because we're going to do some mental math. Population of Tampa is 369,000. How many roundabouts would that be if Tampa were to achieve, and this is a new technical term that has not yet gotten to AASHTO, if Tampa were to achieve roundabout parity with Carmel, Indiana, how many roundabouts would be needed to do that? And here's some other Florida populations, all right? Gainesville would need 130 roundabouts. They have several. Lakeland, 104,000, and so forth. So if you consider Carmel the new normal in the United States, you can see there is a way to go. This was his master thesis for Alec Klochowski at Georgia Tech several years ago. He got on the internet and looked up the state policy, or lack thereof, for all 50 states, did an analysis, which you can download and read yourself, and he found that state policy toward roundabouts correlates with the number of roundabouts in the state. We go from strength of policy from no policy at the left to rather strong policy at the right on the horizontal axis, requiring the analysis for any project receiving DOT funding. And what he found was that the stronger the state policy toward roundabouts, the more roundabouts were being built. What a surprise. And I presented this slide in 2011 at the ITE Vision Zero conference. So, a little history. This slide was presented by Paul Hires. I'm showing it again now with his permission and blessing at last year's Design Training Expo that DOT holds. And he points out that in '96, the DOT, state of Florida, said that modern roundabouts are the preferred intersection in the PPM. And he points out in his slide, how are we doing ever since then? 18 years later, in 2014, after it was supposed to be the preferred intersection, 13 were built on the state highway system. More in 2015, and hopefully around 30 now. I did some numbers a few years ago. I took the population of France and also Australia, and I extrapolated the number of roundabouts they had, and I extrapolated by population to the United States, and found that the United States, and I got the same number extrapolating from both countries, should have around 145,000 roundabouts if we were to, and here's that term again, achieve roundabout parity with either country. The United States has perhaps 4,000 modern roundabouts. So we've got about 141,000 to go if we wanted to do that. extrapolating to Florida, around 6,000 roundabouts, and they may have 200 or so, not in the state system. And so we've got another 5,951 roundabouts to build in Florida, which would mean one a day for the next 20 years. This is another slide shown by Paul Harris. He's at FDOT in Tallahassee. This is Tallahassee headquarters. How is the United States doing? Well, you can see France has a lot, and look at that. They have 5.1 fatalities per 100,000 residents. Now, understand that that's not just because of modern roundabouts. There are many other factors as well, but still, this is a pretty interesting graph. And down at the bottom, 0.9 roundabouts per 1,000 intersections, and a much higher rate of road fatalities per 100,000 inhabitants, more than twice the highest. So, not a good record for the United States, around 8,000 intersection fatalities per year. Incidentally, while we're on the topic of Carmel, usually you have signals at either end of an overpass or underpass, which means you have to have turn lanes, which means you have to have a wide overpass bridge for all those turn lanes, but roundabouts don't have turn lanes, so you can have a much narrower bridge structure. So when you have lunch after this webinar with one of your buddies over in the structural design section, tell her or him, hey, how would you like to save 50 or 40% on your next highway bridge structure? If that might get their attention. So, I just want to point out a few things in the remaining time we have. You know, signalized intersections and stops controls have a queue that builds up, and the latecomer vehicle can't turn right until the signal changes. Person coming this way can't get in, can't get out. So long queues tend to, as the volume goes up over time, the queues get longer, access to the property goes away, customers go away, and investment goes away, and you wind up with dead corners that have gas stations that are closed down. These are a blight not just on that intersection, but on the surrounding community. I just want to make the point that even at peak hour, the queues at modern roundabouts tend to be short and brief. They're fleeting, and certainly off-peak. So they don't have that effect, and as I showed earlier, you can even create a sense of place. A little bit about access management, back to one of our training roundabouts here on the beach, Clearwater Beach. You'll notice there's 6 legs, and you notice that one's a parking lot entrance, and that one is, okay? So it's okay to have parking lot entrances at single and multi-lane roundabouts, in my opinion. You can go see for yourself and see if you think it works. Okay, back to Clearwater Beach. Transit, I mentioned earlier, I think is okay at modern roundabouts. Also, angle parking works just fine. Go see for yourself. And here is a driveway that was, these are driveways, the driveways are where pedestrian ramps are. Looks bad on the plan view, but actually it's fine. So that works, okay. And that last slide, I just want to point out that a few years after we built this roundabout, this person added a semicircular driveway, so there's a driveway right on the one-lane roundabout, and in my observation, that works fine. You can go see for yourself. This is more urban. These are big box stores with large parking lots. Golden, Colorado, many years ago, put in, converted these 4 signalized intersections to 2-lane roundabouts. Crashes went way down, injuries went way down. They didn't have any history of fatalities before or after, but I just repeated the federal highway figure there for you. There's still some left turn conflicts where left turners have to cross 2 opposing lanes. It disrupts traffic flow, and that's the classic crash scenario for older drivers, like you see here. to get access to those parking lots. So instead, one day Golden might consider making these, see it there, might consider making these, getting rid of these hazards and making green medians all the way through with no gaps. But what would those left turners do? They would go up to the next roundabout and make a nice, safe, convenient, comfortable U-turn, and then make a safe right turn into the driveway. So U-turns are one of the secrets of modern roundabouts and can help with many things. We're getting low on time, so in a short, by the way, their sales revenue went up. This is a tough time. Everybody else's sales revenue in the town went down, but sales revenue went up for this corridor. So, oh good. We have a polling question. Do you have in mind a possible good location for a modern roundabout? One lane or two lane or three lane?
There's a few questions in the chat that we'll get to.
Okay, that was half the votes were in, and a lot of people have a place in mind. And a lot of people tell me later that, Ken, everywhere I go, I see all kinds of places. So maybe that will happen with you as well. Thank you very much. We now have time for questions and answer, Q&A. We have about 10 minutes, and I'll turn it over to Anthony and Dennis.
Yeah, so we've got questions in the chat. There's a few that came in throughout the presentation. There's a note that FHWA guidance, they thought discourage attractions in the center of roundabouts to discourage pedestrians from going to it. Because there's been some discussion during this webinar about artwork and different things in there. How does that kind of go along with that?
Well, I'm going to draw on my experience. Keep in mind the first Federal Highway Guide, which was very welcome, came out in about 2000, and then the update, which was substantially improved several years after that. In my observation, this is absolutely not a problem. Pedestrians don't have a big interest in walking to the middle of intersections. If they do, it's not so bad because, did I mention anything about the circulating speeds being low? They're not going to get run over in 15-mile-an-hour traffic any more than they would in a parking lot, probably less so. So I wouldn't put small plaques that you need to stand in front of to read. If you're going to put something that's interesting to look at, something other than landscaping, I suggest you make it big, like those other things, the type of thing that, because of scale, you would enjoy from a distance back. So that's my take on that. But I urge folks to, when you visit modern roundabouts, after you do the speed exercise, to park and do a walkabout and stand there and watch. Look for when people swivel their heads, watch pedestrians, see what happens with the interaction between drivers and pedestrians, observe all these things, spend time at modern roundabouts. In the case of District 7, there's some very nice two-laners just to the south, and elsewhere here in Tampa, we have some I pointed out that are low speed.
Traffic volume thresholds, is there a volume at which, beyond which roundabouts should not be considered, or what's the guidance on?
The rule of thumb for a one-lane roundabout is around 20,000. Same as a two-lane road, right? No surprise. Now, if it's congested anyway, or you can live with congestion because of the context or because of other reasons, I've heard as much as 24, 25, even 26,000 vehicles per day for a one-lane roundabout if you can live with congestion. And that actually might be quite appropriate in the context. And again, that's just peak hour. There's all the rest of the day to use the highway system. Remember, only about 10% of motorized traffic uses the roadway system during peak hour. So let's not let peak hour considerations rule every decision. because we're good engineers.
What about spacing? Are there criteria for spacing between roundabouts along the corridor?
I don't think it's a bugaboo not to put roundabouts too closely together, and there are examples of them being quite close, more than a block, less than a block distance between them, say 300 feet block, and they seem to be fine. It seems to work fine. If you're going to do something like that, you might look at, or better yet, hop on a plane and go visit examples like that, possibly even engage the services of designers who have designed them close together. But I don't think that's going to be a problem in most cases, perhaps much less of a problem than signalized intersections close to each other. So don't shy away from that just out of hand. Same thing with proximity to railroad tracks. Don't dismiss that possibility out of hand. It may not only work okay, but it may actually turn out to be a big safety advantage.
Statistics with regards to safety regarding 1 versus 2 lane roundabouts. Are there any research studies or any stats that you're aware of about them being, because you'll have slightly more conflict points. So are there more crashes, less crashes than a single lane, dual lane? What do you know about that?
There isn't much research, period, in the United States. The study that Federal Highway relies on was done back around 2000. And by the way, Federal Highway, I think, came out with that statement around 2000. For some reason, nobody has funded a large national study of modern roundabouts and their crash rates. There have been a number of local studies, though, such as the one I just showed you for the 40th Street 2-lane roundabouts. So I can't rely on studies. There are more opportunities and more conflicts at multi-lane roundabouts, plus the speeds are slightly higher. And pedestrians have to cross 2 lanes at most of the legs or all the legs for a 2-lane, 2 circulating lane roundabout. So and also where vehicles exit from the inside lane and exit the roundabout is an opportunity for fender bender crashes between vehicles. And we had quite a few of those when we first opened the Big Beach and Clearwater Entryway roundabout. That started happening on day 1. And problem is substantially reduced now. So the answer is probably yes, but I don't have any national studies really. It's certainly not a whole satchel full of them to point to. But still, most speed crashes.
You won't have the T-bone. You won't have the left turn crash with a single or dual. So it's.
Need I mention that nobody dies at 15, 16, 18, 20 miles an hour. By the way, my personal best at the Big Beach roundabout, which is an ellipsabout, so a slightly longer distance on the north and south side of the circulating lanes, is 22 miles an hour, and that was nobody around. Usually traffic there is, in my observation, I've driven it zillions of times, is 14, 16, 18 miles per hour, even though it's a 2-lane roundabout. And likewise, on the new 2-lane roundabouts on 40th Street south of District 7 headquarters, my observation has been that speeds don't usually get up above 20 very much.
I like that corridor. That's a good one, the 40th Street,
yeah.
District 7.
Yeah.
Since these are, relatively new around here, we don't have too many of them. Are you aware of any changes to driver education? Are there any changes to requirements for driver's license, or are we educating drivers in any way on how to maneuver these?
I don't know the answer to that. To be knowledgeable, my impression is not too much. Drivers' handbooks in many of the states have been updated to add modern roundabouts, and also a lot of times there'll be an educational outreach effort when a new roundabout is going in, especially if it's the first one in a community. And there are a number of videos floating around now, most of them quite good. And Federal Highway has a roundabout video that I recommend wholeheartedly for all audiences, professionals, engineers, politicians, and the public and laypersons. It's a terrific roundabout video that you can download or just watch it live. The Federal Highway Administration and the Florida DOT have roundabout brochures, and you can obtain boxes of these and hand them out. But a lot of the education seems to take place at public meetings when a roundabout has been proposed. Fortunately, it's kind of no-brainer, one-trial learning for most people, users, in my estimation. The exception being when the inner circulating lane of a multi-lane roundabout, a vehicle needs to exit. That's something that is not well understood.
Okay. In any of your roundabouts, have you had experience with blind pedestrians going through them?
Not at my roundabouts. The folks who are not themselves blind, but who are quite knowledgeable about persons who cannot see or who cannot see well, have had a place at the table at the TRB Roundabout Committee for the last, well, ever since I've been on the committee for the last, I guess, 12 years or so. And I had an experience with got 1 minute left, so I'll answer this quickly. This is an issue that's not entirely resolved. The issue is that over the years, persons who train people who can't see or who cannot see well, and by the way, there's many more people who cannot see well than there are people who are totally blind, because most people don't go blind instantly with an injury. Most people go blind over many years. Anyway, they've been trained to recognize the audible cues at signalized intersections. Those cues are absent in a modern roundabout. So a lot of the trainers in Sarasota and elsewhere are trying to figure out new training protocols.
Okay.
The fact that speeds are lower and the fact that drivers are looking right at the pedestrians, and the fact you don't have those two classic pedestrian crashes, I think help all users and all pedestrian and all vulnerable users to an extent. So that's a boon, but there still is this question of what do you listen to if you've been relying on your hearing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there was one funny comment from Rudy Yums. I don't know if you know Rudy, but he says 65 is not old.
That's why I used the far chart and the section inflection point. I heard it's not even the new 40 anymore; it's the new 35 now.
Over 70 still driving, doing good. So
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, no, this is great. It's a fascinating topic. Dennis, do you want to the next webinar?
I'm sorry.
When is the next webinar?
It's August 2nd.
August 2nd, right. So we're meeting up on August 2nd. Yeah, for everybody that's online right now, we have an automatic go-to-webinar notice that goes out to attendees, and I believe the notice for the webinar in 2 weeks on August 2nd went out while we were presenting, and it has the title for today's webinar. I'm going to correct that right after this webinar and send that off because we have two webinars that are so close together. The system automatically sent out a notice while we were in this webinar before I had a chance to change it. So apologies for that, but you'll be receiving an extra email from me.
And that's on the Florida Green Book. So
the topic is Florida Green Book in 2 weeks.
Right.
Great.
Right. And Ken, I wanted to let you know that your presentation is the first one we've had with a number of poll questions, but I think it really worked well with your presentation, and the topic is really good. And I thought it was very interesting. So I appreciate your time and your presentation. So.
Well, thank you, Dennis. It was an experiment. Watching webinars is kind of a passive activity, a good time to check emails. And I was hoping, and maybe people will email me and tell me what it was like for them. I was hoping that the polling capability, when I found out about it, would engage audience and give them a role to play. And also all of us, not just me, all of us would learn interesting things from the responses, and I was hoping that it also would be sort of fun.
Yeah, I think the question.
Once you and I got our signals. Yeah, once Ken and I got our signals straight on as to when I was bringing up a poll question, I think it got smoother.
Now the reason for, I'm sorry, Dennis, I'll just interject this quickly.
Okay.
Just very quickly, everybody goes to lunch. At in-person presentations, I'd say if anybody wants to know more about something, bring me your card that has your email on it and write on the back of the card what it is you want to know more about, many more topics besides this. Please, everyone, feel free to email me and we can chat further if you like.
Right, and I'll be checking back with you too for future topics. But I just wanted to say, I think the poll questions were interactive with the attendees, and then also it also helped to generate additional questions. So I think it was very useful.
Is there a typo in your email address? Someone's.
Oh, you're right. Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Thank you. That should be Schwartz, just like you would think. S-C-H-W-A-R-T-Z.
They're paying attention in the chat. Thank you for that.
Schwartz, S-C-H-W-A-R-T-Z.
Yeah, we'll correct that before we post the PowerPoint of the webinar.
Cool.
I mean, it's like a video. Well, I guess with that, we'll go ahead and end the recording now. Everybody, thanks for attending. We'll stay on the line for a few minutes, but it's 5 minutes past 12. We want to respect everyone's time. So if you have to get going, go ahead. But if you have anything else in the chat that you would like to add, we'll stay on the line for a minute.
Are there more questions?
No, just the question about the typo. They wanted to make sure they had your email correct.